welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schleck. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. We have an emergency pod. I did not plan on doing a podcast tonight at all, but the Thunder have forced our hands as they beat the Golden State Warriors in overtime. Al, this was such a ridiculous game. Just absurd.
It was incredible. I mean, in this, let's say post Russ era, post KD Russ.
Yeah.
I can't off the top of my head think of a better regular season game. Because it had everything. It really did have everything. Like the fact that it was so close, like through the first half, and then they start letting it get away. It gets all the way up to 18. There's a point in that third quarter where you're like, okay, like this is it. Like whatever, move on to the next game. They're playing Portland tomorrow.
It did.
That'll be a win.
It did feel that way.
Then for them to come all the way back, and then for Andrew Wiggins to go like supernova in the fourth, it was like just taking you all the way back to the third quarter. You're like, this sucks. Why did I get excited for this at all? This is stupid. Andrew Wiggins is stupid. He's shooting like 13% from three on the season. All of a sudden, he is like prime Steph. And then for Chet to hit that three, and just the way, and actually the most like upsetting part of the Andrew Wiggins thing was how well they had played in that fourth quarter. Like it was so impressive the way that they came back. J-Dub starting it at the beginning of the fourth quarter.
He was so good.
And then Shai just like every shot was incredible. Every single shot Shai took in the fourth quarter and overtime was a tough either step back or just like weird. He shot one over Kuminga on the baseline that even I was like, whoa, like that didn't even look like a good shot, and he still got it. Like it was just incredible. And then you have the Chet three to send it in overtime.
Gosh, the Chet three was unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. And the thing that hit me about it was like, we have SGA. We have one of the best players in the league.
Yeah.
And drawing that up for Chet was like a great play.
Yeah.
We have another guy you can run that play for. He can get that shot off against basically anyone other than like Wemby. And for him to hit that, and of course the way he hit it, I mean, how many times have we seen KD hit a shot that looks just like that?
It looked like a Durant shot. It really did. It was kind of eerie. And like, and the skinniness, like his shoulders, just like his shoulders looked like Durant. The turnaround looked like Durant. It was just,
wow. And I loved his reaction afterwards because he was super pumped, but you also kept seeing him look back at the Warriors, and you could tell he was like saying something to the Warriors, and who knows what it was. Yeah. But that just showed you like his, competitive fire that he's got. And then to come out in overtime, which I was feeling pretty confident after they hit that shot just because it felt like such a backbreaker for the Warriors. But then it's just like Shai just turns it on again. And that sequence he had, that was in overtime, right, where he had like the tough step back or whatever, and then he had the steal into the layup, right? That was in overtime, right?
Mm-hmm.
That sequence, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, yeah, what a game. Because honestly, as it started ballooning to 18, the thought in my head was like, as good as this team has been, one of their issues last year was that they were not very good against teams who were better than 500. They were not good against good teams. And they had caught already a couple of breaks this season. I mean, they lost the game without De'Aaron Fox, but, they beat Cleveland when Cleveland didn't have, a couple of their guys. And then they just beat the Warriors without Steph. And so I'm just watching that game like, oh, man, is this going to be another one of these games where, like, I know they don't have Draymond, but they had Steph. And, like, dropping this game would have upset me because it just feels like a game like they got to start winning some of these.
Yeah.
And so for them to pull this type of a game out on the road, like, that's what you want to see. Because I don't really care about Portland tomorrow. I mean, I'm going to be there. It's great. But, like, they should win that game. That's like a nothing game,
Yeah.
Like, they better win that game.
Yeah.
They better
win that game. Yeah.
Whereas this one felt more important for like the overall development of this team. Like these are the type of benchmark games you have to start winning at some point.
Yeah, it felt like they were letting go of the rope a little bit in the beginning of the second half. because they just weren't playing with much aggression, and
Yeah.
they weren't playing with much force. And you just saw like, oh, they're kind of giving this one away. And then like Kenrich Williams and Cason Wallace like said, no, like we're not going to let that happen. Like those dudes came in and really brought it. That was to me what kind of started, and Shai kind of joined in with those two. It was like it's like just like one really simple play, like Cason Wallace just getting the jump ball with Sharich. I don't even think they won the jump ball, but it was just like there was force there, and Cason like kept
Yeah.
bringing it, and having Kenrich there to help lead that second unit is huge. He was awesome, and then J Dub, who scored 10 straight on his own in the fourth quarter, was just unbelievable. And also Isaiah Joe, T Dot in the chat, he's right. Isaiah Joe blocked a jump shot in the fourth quarter. He was leading the break. He hit some big time shots. Zay was so good. And then I just can't believe that Chet hit that shot. I mean, I can. Like he was unbelievable. But he already had 33 points. He was killing it. You thought, okay, this is like a great double-double, career high. Like this is an amazing game. Even if they lose it, like there's a lot of really like cool things going on here with him. But then the fact that he hit that shot was like that was a moment. Like that's a moment that we're going to remember as Thunder fans for a long time. Like that's a game that we're going to
Yeah.
turn back to in 5 years and be like, "Hey, remember that Chet like turnaround 3 in the corner where like he didn't have any room and he still hits it?" I mean,
Especially because if there was a criticism of Chet this season, it's that he hasn't kind of asserted himself on offense, and we know that part of that is the plan, like of the team. But we also know just from Chet's personality and how he played at Gonzaga that like he's willing to take a step back, for the good of the team. And so to see him have this type of a game and then to hit that type of a shot. I mean, I was just looking up on StatHead like the rookies that have had 30, 10, and 5 in a game. And it has happened like a decent number of times, 161 times, but it's a bunch of like it's almost all Hall of Famers. I
yeah,
mean, it's really incredible. Like anyone who's done it more than once is basically a Hall of Famer. Oscar Robertson has done it an ridiculous amount of times as a rookie.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, like not it was that one, that play was drawn up for him, two, that he actually made it, and three, like he had a rough stretch leading up to that. He had the play where he probably could have had a wide open three. I mean, basically a wide open three, given how tall he is. And he passes it off to Isaiah Joe, and the shot clock expires.
hmm
I think he had
hmm
another play where he might have had a turnover or something. And so coming down there at the end, like it started to look a little shaky on his end. So for him to end it in that way was just incredible. I mean,
yeah,
this was by far his best game of the season. And it gets you so excited because, like, dude, if this is possible, even if this is like the best version of it, like the normal game version of what he did tonight is still like 25 points on great efficiency. Like
yeah,
that would be the normal version of tonight. So, yeah, it's hard not to be incredibly excited. I mean, he has clearly asserted himself as like the second best player on this team. Not that it really matters, but like he is that level of player already.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the fact that he got 22 shots tonight, and they were finding him like on the short roll. They were finding him as spot up. They were finding him around the hoop. They're finding him in mismatches a lot too, which I think is going to be key moving forward because this team is so weird. They love to run a ton of like guard pick and rolls. They like to get into these weird mismatches, and I think that they're going to be able to do that a lot with Chet because sometimes teams feel like they're forced to go a little bit smaller, and it's hard for them to keep a big out there. And if they do, it's one big, and so
Yeah.
it's really cool to see them start to figure it out. And like tonight, there were obviously moments where they weren't clicking, but then there were big moments where they were.
And
And
and I love the way he finishes dunks. Like when he's in either like rolling to the basket or even if he's like in the dunker spot and he catches it, he gets it in the basket so quick. Like it almost when they're making those quick decisions like that, it becomes very hard to block Chet at the rim because he almost like sneaks the ball into the net before the team really has any way to stop it.
Yeah.
And so those points end up looking really easy.
Mm-hmm.
And there were multiple plays like that where he was just getting like these super easy dunks that he's just like sneaking in there real quick. And that really helps his efficiency. You mentioned Joe. I want to go back to him because
Yeah.
that play he had, I believe it was the layup with 7 minutes left in the game. Steph had just hit 2 free throws to go up 98-96. And he comes down and just has like a ridiculously tough finish. I forget who it was on, but like bodied whoever it was and still made the shot. Like just incredible. Like plays that we just never conceived of when we were thinking about Isaiah Joe. Even when he was like amazing at the beginning of last year, we weren't thinking that like this was going to be the next step. And he had a few plays like that. He had another like floater in the mid range that went in. He's he's a he's a legitimate asset for this team. He is not
Yeah.
just a shooter. And I know we've said that over and over again, but he keeps proving it to us. Like he was
Mm-hmm.
out there in crunch time over
Mm-hmm.
Josh Giddey.
Yeah.
Mark is
And
playing
he
Isaiah Joe,
and he should have been.
and I
I
think and I think
mean,
it's the right decision too. Yeah,
mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's also a credit to Mark because it's not easy to be the coach of a team like this where there's so many guys that need minutes. And like you have to like push the right buttons at the right times. And I thought he did tonight. I mean, the guys that he really played in this game, the starters, Joe, Casey Wallace, Kenrich. Like Wiggs got 6 minutes. Vava played about 8. And then Jay Will played almost 6. I
yeah. And
mean,
another thing I
that's the
thought
right
was
choice.
awesome that he did was so Kenrich subs out with 6.5 minutes left in the fourth. He came in briefly for like one defensive play where he subbed out for Isaiah Joe, but he was out at 6.5 minutes in the fourth, basically. And Lou Dort was also out for like the
Yeah.
majority of that fourth
Yeah.
quarter.
Dort only
Then he
played
bring
26 minutes.
then he brings both of those guys back in to start the
Mm-hmm.
overtime. So all of a sudden you have like these two really fresh guys, two really fresh defenders to just
Yeah.
throw out there, and you can do it and you feel good about it.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was a really smart play by Mark. And it speaks again to their depth that he could rest those guys for that long and then just spring them on the Warriors all of a sudden in overtime. Andrew, have you frozen? Andrew, have you frozen? Andrew has frozen. Can you guys still hear me? Let me know in the chat. Am I still live? Can you still hear me? Hal says, "Oh no, Andrew, how can you hear me? Can you see me?" Yes, yes, yes. Okay. All right, so we got rid of Andrew. Great. Um, well, real quick, if anyone's gonna be at the game tomorrow night, I will be there. I got tickets. Uh, Shout out to Blake who got me tickets. I'm gonna be in section 114. If you're going to the game, let me know. Oh no, Andrew's completely gone. Oh no, Andrew. Andrew is out of town, so he's having to record this from like a hotel or something. So hopefully he comes back soon. Um, but yeah, that was actually, you know what? While Andrew's not here, I'll bring up like the one negative aspect of this game, which is like, isn't it interesting how often Mark has been willing to go away from Giddy at the end of some of these games? And I think last year you would say, well, Giddy's just not playing well, and like maybe they have another option or something. Whereas this year, like I didn't think Giddy had a great game by any stretch of the imagination, but they have so many more options that make sense for an end game lineup than they did last year. Like the fact that you can bring in Isaiah Joe, Kaysen Wallace, Kenrich Williams, like any of those guys in most situations at the end of the game are going to make more sense than Josh Giddey simply because of the defense and the potential for shooting. And I really do think that brings up some long term questions about Giddey, simply because, like, when you're in a playoff setting, like, is he going to be able to close games? I think right now you would say probably not, just because they have so many of these other good options. And so I'm really interested to see, like, one, how he responds to that, because I'm assuming, like, I mean, Josh Giddey probably, he wants to be a good player in this league. He probably doesn't like having to sit at the end of games. But at the same time, like, dude, there are so many options, and he's still going to get his minutes the rest of the game. But I think when it comes down to a closing lineup, he's just behind the eight ball right now. There's just too many other better options against these teams. Like, especially tonight. Like, I think every decision Mark made sense in that moment. And so I am kind of
Yeah.
interested. That's like the one, like, negative or questionable thing about this game is, like, how does this look going forward, and how does that develop over the course of the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean the fact that some of it's like J-Dub is emerging as like a real like go-to guy in moments.
Yeah,
Or like you
yeah,
need to have the ball in his hands because like he took over at the beginning of the fourth quarter and brought them back into that game. So like you can't not play him and give him the ball and give him the shots. And then the fact that you have Isaiah Joe, Casey Wallace, and Kenrich Williams all coming off the bench, like all three like very trusted guys, along with a guy like Lou Dort sat for lots of stretches in this game too.
yeah,
The fact that you can just bring those guys in place of anybody, like literally anybody in the lineup. So like there's going to be nights where it's like not Dort's night or not Shai. It's obviously going to always be Shai's night. Maybe Dub has a game where it's not his night, but like you can put anybody around Shai and Chet. If you put any of guys around them, three of them in, there will be a case to be made that you could put Casey Wallace and Isaiah Joe just in there with Chet and Shai. Like that's a lineup that I think will work really well. And that's
yeah,
like the left of this lineup. And this is where like we talk about sacrifice. Like we talk about like what it's going to take for this team to actually like hit their ceiling. And some of it is that they're going to have to truly sacrifice. Like this is what looks like one game. This is what it looks like. This is what you have to in order to make it work.
yeah. Especially,
It is so fascinating. This is such a big win for them. Like for them to do this in Golden State too. Like we haven't even really emphasized that. Like this is against the Golden State Warriors is just absurd.
yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at the shot attempts right now. I mean, this is really like, I think for a lot of Thunder fans, this is what they kind of envisioned going into the year. Like, you have SGA at 29 shots, Chet at 22, J Dub at 16, Giddy at 10, Isaiah Joe at 9, and then Dort at 6. Like, the way this is starting to work, and you're not going to get 22 shots from Chet every night, but that type of shot distribution from this roster is just eventually going to get to a point where they're killing teams, because if those three guys are taking the most shots on your team, all those guys are super efficient. I mean, Chet, 14
Yeah.
of 22, J-Dub, 8 of 16, Shai, 18 of 29. That three-man combo right there is so efficient. If that is your three-man core, forget who else is on the rest of the team. Like,
Yeah.
that is a killer three-man lineup.
Mm-hmm.
I need to look up their stats together. I bet they're good.
Yeah. It is absurd. I'm currently in a hotel on my on my phone's Wi-Fi. I can't have my
On your
video on.
phone's Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I can't even get connected to our streaming service via the hotel Wi-Fi. So I'm on my phone's Wi-Fi. So
You sound good. You
again,
sound
I was
good
not
now.
fully okay. I was not fully prepared to do this. I was not fully prepared to be here doing this tonight. But the game called for it. An absurd
Okay,
game.
I got
Yeah,
the
go.
stat right
You got
here.
some stats. Okay, give us some stats.
So this is probably before tonight. What is their record right now? It's 9-4. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
9-4.
yeah. So this is before tonight. That three-man group, Shai, Chet, and J Dub, 221 minutes together. They're a plus 14 right now. which is
Okay.
the highest net rating of any 3-man unit who's played like more than 100 minutes.
Yeah.
So yes, it does make sense, and obviously it makes sense. I mean, all those guys are just so efficient, and they all fit together so well, and any of them can take over at any moment. I mean,
Yeah.
I know we already talked about it, but like the fact that you have these amazing games from Shai and Chet, and meanwhile, like you have to have that early fourth quarter run from J-Dub for any of this to work, and the fact that he can do that, that you have a guy who's not one of your main two guys, that we're talking about, that he
Yeah.
can do that he can score 10 straight points and do it in a way that looked so easy for him. I mean, he's basically
Mm-hmm.
just like running the same play over and over
Mm-hmm.
again, just driving on the Warriors, and they couldn't do
Mm-hmm.
anything about it. Yeah,
Yeah. It's
hard
true.
not to get excited.
Yeah. Especially when like Wiggins has not played well so far this season for the Warriors. And he had like a really good game tonight.
12 of
31 points,
19. Oh my
12 of
gosh.
19, 5 of 8 from 3 with the big
Jeez.
dagger 3 at the end. Like they celebrated like that was the game. Like they
Yeah,
and
I was in despair.
everybody thought that was the
I
game.
was done.
And then just to like put a bow on this pod, it was that Chet 3 that again that we are going to think about. It looked like a young Kevin Durant. Like I just don't know how you can escape it. And we've talked about it over like the last few weeks. Like there's a world where Chet is the best player on this team. And tonight we saw like the first like true glimpse of it. Like we've seen flashes of that happening, but this is a true glimpse
And
of
if
like
that
what it could look like with Chet as the best player on the team.
and if you believe that that's even possible, like, go back and watch the Shea highlights from tonight because
Totally.
th
Totally.
if Chet really could be the best player, then this team is going to be unstoppable because Shea is that good.
Yeah.
I mean, this was one of the better Shea games I've seen in a while.
Yeah.
At
Get
least that,
40.
like,
Get
that
40.
that fourth quarter and overtime, it's just every shot. It wasn't like he was getting a bunch of, like, cheapo transition plays or anything. Every shot was like an ISO step back on someone, every
Yeah.
single one, and he hit
Yep.
every one. I mean, he only took 2 free throws tonight, and
Yeah.
part of that was because he wasn't really getting to the rim a ton. He was living in the mid-range,
Mm-hmm.
and he was just
Yeah.
killing them.
Unstoppable. Like he was just ice cold, just killing them over and over and over again. He was giving them different looks. He was, I mean, it didn't matter what they did. It did not matter one bit what they did. Like they
I
could
know,
not
like,
stop him.
Kuminga is, like, so big, and he's so athletic and strong, and when you just see him matched up with Shea, you're like, "Oh, he'll probably do well here." Or, like, he'll probably
Yeah.
hold his own, but, like, no one mattered.
Yeah.
Nothing mattered.
Yeah.
Also,
Okay. My oh yeah. Oh yeah, one more thing.
one more thing, dude, Clay looks bad. Clay
Yeah,
looks really bad.
Clay's looking pretty cooked as like somebody who's not just like your ninth guy.
Dude, those threes he took at the end where he was in the corner and, like, the first one missed so bad, and then they passed it back to him, and Kendricks was, like, right on him. It was a terrible shot for him to take, and I think it airballed or it, like, barely grazed the rim. He looked terrible, and I mean, if you think back to what Clay was, like, at his peak, and the fact
Oh
that
yeah.
Curry is, like, still there. Like, Curry is still
Curry is still
incredible,
so good. He's still so good.
and Clay is just, like, a shadow of what he once was. I don't really
Mm-hmm.
know what they do. They obviously need Wiggins to play like this
Yeah.
more often than not, and getting
Yeah.
Draymond back is gonna help. They need to play these young
Yeah,
guys because
definitely.
I do think they have, like, something with some of these guys, but, yeah, they're an interesting team because they started off, like, like, they had a good start to the season, and then you were looking at their schedule, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, they have so many home games coming up. This is where they're finally gonna get on track." They have now lost 6 in a row. 6 in a row, and 5 of those
Yeah.
have been at home.
That's a problem. That's a big problem. And the Thunder have won 2 of those games. I mean, I thought, Curry's coming back. This is going to be a tough one to get. is gonna be a tough one to get for OKC, just because you know how motivated they are. Like they don't want to
Yeah.
lose 2 in a row to Oklahoma City, and it looked like halfway through the third quarter that they weren't, that they were just going to deliver this win. And the Thunder showed like some like real grit and some real character throughout the rest of that game that I was just like, I was so impressed. And it was from J-Dub, Chet, and Shai. Like those guys delivered this game for them, along with like the grit of Cason Wallace and Kenrich Williams.
And Isaiah Joe.
That
Don't
was
leave
the
him out.
team. And Isaiah Joe. Good. Don't let me forget Zay. Zay was so good. He was amazing tonight.
So like they've done very well. What they've done what they should have done. They're won 4 in a row now. They go to Portland tomorrow night. I'll be there. Shout out.
Yep.
I think there's going to be some down to dunkers there.
Yep.
And then they play Chicago at home. You kind of hope that they win those next 2 games. They get to a 6-game winning streak because then the schedule gets super fun. Now let's see some like real tests because they're going to play Philly at home at the Timberwolves.
Yeah.
I really want to see how they handle that game because the Wolves have kind of had their number. Then they play the Lakers at home, and then they go on the road and play Dallas. Like that is a pretty awesome 4-game stretch. And beating any of those teams, I think, would be a quality win. So I'm really interested to see how they handle it. But hopefully they can get these next 2 so they can get that like nice buffer. That would take them to 11-4. And then we could go into this hard stretch and see how they do.
11-4 is such a great record. That would be absurd. Like they should do it. Like looking at these next couple games, they should do it. But yeah, that's an incredible start.
And the amazing thing is, like, you think the New Orleans game where they were up by whatever they were up by and lost.
Yeah.
And then the Golden State game. Like that was 2 of their 4 losses. Either of those could have been wins. So yeah, it's understandable if you're feeling pretty hyped right now about this team.
Yeah. I think it is warranted and pretty wild what they've been able to do. Okay. This emergency pod is officially over. I don't think I can function much longer on this internet. And if you're watching the YouTube stream, you know why. It like looks pretty sad.
You sound great, though. Thanks so much for great.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you guys have an awesome weekend. We'll talk to you guys again on Monday.